My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. A very good evening to you. And today on Worldview, from the war in Ukraine, we have reports on Turkey formally opening a joint coordination center to oversee Ukrainian grain exports under an unbacked deal aimed at resuming shipments from the war-torn country's Black Sea ports. We will hear from federal prosecutors as they press harder on witnesses as regards the behavior of former U.S. President Donald Trump over the U.S. Capitol riot, with skepticisms in the air as to whether a formal criminal investigation into Trump himself should be launched. Now, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's speech has sparked further resignations, this time from a member of his inner circle, Zsuzsa Hegedűs. Hegedűs had exact words of description for Orbán's speech, which we will examine in today's outing. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First on Worldview today, Turkey has formally opened a joint coordination center to oversee Ukrainian grain exports under an unbacked deal aimed at resuming shipments from the war-torn country's Black Sea ports. Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar unveiled the monitoring center in Istanbul at a ceremony held 5 days after Moscow and Kyiv signed the accord. Akar told reporters the goal of the facility was to ensure the safe shipment of grains from 3 Ukrainian ports, with more than 25 million tons of grain waiting there. Meanwhile, European Union member states have agreed a voluntary 15% cut in their gas consumption this winter after energy ministers met in Brussels yesterday. The agreement also includes a union alert, a special mechanism that would make the reduction mandatory in an emergency, which can only be triggered after approval by the European Council, made up of the leaders of EU member states. In a statement, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said, by acting together to reduce the demand for gas, taking into account all the relevant national specificities, the EU had secured strong foundations for the indispensable solidarity between member states in the face of Putin's energy blackmail. European ministers had gathered in Brussels as Gazprom announced that it would cut gas flows through the critical Nord Stream 1 pipeline to 20% of capacity. The Russian energy giant blamed problems with a turbine in the pipeline that runs under the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany. European Commissioner for Energy Kadri Simpson said there was a clear pattern of Russian behavior to create uncertainty, increase prices, and undermine EU's unity. Simpson said the pattern was likely to change and that gas deliveries could stop any moment.
We have made a huge step towards securing gas supplies for our citizens and economies for the upcoming winter. The negotiations were not easy, and I would like to thank all my ministerial colleagues and their teams who were working tirelessly around the clock to prove that agreeing today is not a mission impossible. I know the decision was not easy, but I think at the end everybody understands that this sacrifice is necessary. We have to, and we will share the pain. Gradual saving during the following months will ensure we have enough gas. We will not allow Russia to threaten our security by deliberately.
In the meantime, Iran will soon start accepting payments made with Russia's MIR bank cards. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister for Economic Diplomacy Mehdi Safari stated this, making it the latest country to adopt the Russian-made alternative to Visa and MasterCard. Russia has acted to forge close ties with Iran since it invaded Ukraine, as the Kremlin, sanctioned heavily by the West, attempts to build new economic and diplomatic partnerships. Elsewhere, South Korea and Cuba have also recently started accepting MIR, which means both peace and world in Russian, and the United Arab Emirates intends to start accepting it soon. The cards also work in popular tourist destinations, Turkey and Vietnam, and some former Soviet republics. Russian cards issued by Visa and MasterCard stopped functioning overseas after the world's two largest payment processing networks suspended operations in early March. Now, still on the crisis in Ukraine, 6 people have been wounded in a missile attack on the city of Kharkiv. The city's mayor, Ihor Terekov, confirmed this to newsmen. Terekov said 2 S-300 missiles hit the city's industrial district in the early hours, and rescuers were searching for victims in the rubble. In a related development, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has nominated a lawmaker from his Servant of the People Party, Andrei Kostin, as the country's next prosecutor general. Zelensky submitted a formal request to Parliament to vote to confirm Kostin's appointment to replace Irina Venediktova, who was removed as prosecutor general earlier this month. It was not immediately clear when Parliament would vote on Kostin's appointment. Now, a tongue-in-cheek petition to give the United Kingdom's outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson Ukrainian citizenship and make him the country's Prime Minister has garnered more than 2,500 signatures. This comes hours after the request was put up on Ukraine's official petition site. Johnson remains a cult figure in Kyiv for his vocal support of Ukraine as it fights off Russia's invasion. Paintings, murals, and even cakes in Ukraine's capital bear the likeness of the man some Ukrainians affectionately call Johnsonyok. The petition, addressed to Zelensky, lists Johnson's strengths as worldwide support for Boris Johnson, a clear position against the military invasion of Ukraine, and wisdom in the political, financial, and legal spheres. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has criticized Russia's influence in Africa, deeming it a preoccupation for the continent's people. Macron stated this during an official visit to Cameroon. Speaking in Yaoundé alongside his Cameroon counterpart, Paul Biya, Macron said Russia's presence in Africa was based on misinformation, militias, and complicity with weakened powers. According to Macron, as a friend of Africa, France will do everything so that the Russian influence does not spread too much, as that would not be good for the people of Africa. Biya, whose government signed a cooperation agreement with Russia in April, said the accord was normal and constituted only an act of managing its bilateral relations with the country in effect since 2015. Away from that, U.S. Justice Department is examining Donald Trump's actions in connection with efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Federal prosecutors have reportedly asked witnesses directly about the behavior of the former U.S. president. So far, they have chosen not to open a formal criminal investigation into Trump himself. It will be recalled that rioters had stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, in an effort to overturn the president's election defeat. No former U.S. president has ever been indicted for criminal conduct. Elsewhere, a member of Viktor Orban's inner circle has resigned after the Hungarian Prime Minister spoke out against becoming peoples of mixed race. Zsuzsa Hegedus, who has known the nationalist Orban for 20 years, described the speech as a pure Nazi text. The International Auschwitz Committee of Holocaust survivors called the speech stupid and dangerous. Orban's spokesman said the media had misrepresented the comments. The speech took place on Saturday in a region of Romania which has a large Hungarian community. In it, Orban reportedly said European peoples should be free to mix with one another, but that mixing with non-Europeans created a mixed-race world. Urban's anti-migration views are well known, but for Hegedus, Saturday's speech had crossed a line. In another development, Sri Lanka's former president Gotabaya Rajapaksa is expected to return to the country from Singapore. Cabinet spokesperson Bandula Gunawardena told reporters that Rajapaksa was not in hiding, but the date of his return was not known. It would be recalled that the former leader had fled Sri Lanka after mass unrests over an economic crisis. Many protesters say he mishandled the nation's finances, leading to soaring prices of essential goods. Rajapaksa left Sri Lanka on July 13 for the Maldives before making his way to Singapore on July 14. Meanwhile, Singapore has extended a short-stay visa for Sri Lanka's deposed President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. It could be recalled that Rajapaksa had fled his country on July 13 after his official residence was stormed by thousands of protesters who had demonstrated for months against the island nation's painful economic crisis. He first escaped to the Maldives in a military plane and traveled on to Singapore, where he has been staying on a short-term visit passed since July 14. Reports say Rajapaksa's 14-day visit pass has been extended, allowing him to stay until August 11. Now, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has met with visiting Indonesian President Joko Widodo to discuss bilateral ties and issues of common concern. Premier Li said, as friendly neighbors and major developing countries in the region, China and Indonesia share broad common interests, which makes them natural cooperation partners. He noted that amid the current complex international situation, China is ready to work with Indonesia to consolidate mutual political trust, insist on mutual respect and equal treatment, and strengthen the synergy of development strategies. The Premier added that China and Indonesia were also ready to partner to break new grounds for all-dimensional, multi-tiered and high-level bilateral cooperation so as to bring more benefits to both countries and the region. Li said China was willing to accelerate the resumption of people-to-people exchanges on the basis of COVID-19 prevention and control, and pledges support for Indonesia's hosting of this year's G20 summit. Hailing China-Indonesia relations as mutually beneficial with the potential to serve as a model for China-ASEAN cooperation, Li expressed the hope that Indonesia will continue to play a positive role in the implementation of the regional comprehensive economic partnership. On his part, Widodo said Indonesia was ready to work with China to push for the completion of the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway as scheduled, and more positive results in areas such as practical cooperation on trade and investment, finance, manufacturing, agriculture, and maritime. Now, on a sad note, we have reports from Philippines where death tolls from an earthquake is on a rise, with scores injured. Details of this and more in a moment. Please stay. Thanks for staying tuned. Now to the United Kingdom, where the latest Tory leadership debate between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss was yesterday cancelled after the presenter fainted on air. The Sun and Talk TV debate, hosted by journalist Kate McCann, abruptly halted around halfway through after a loud crash was heard. Talk TV said McCann was fine, but the channel had been given medical advice not to continue. The channel apologized to its viewers and listeners for the turn of events. Now, the leadership candidates tweeted that they were relieved to hear McCann was fine and indicated they would be happy to stage a rematch. The Talk TV presenter had reportedly been due to co-host the debate alongside The Sun's political editor, Harry Cole, but he pulled out after testing positive for COVID. Still in the UK, 40,000 railway workers in the United Kingdom have staged a walkout over pay, job security and working conditions as the country battles its worst costs of living crisis in decades. The nationwide 24-hour strike today brought the rail network to a virtual standstill, with only 1 in 5 trains running. General Secretary of the National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers, Mick Lynch, said strikes were necessary as wages had failed to keep pace with UK inflation currently at a 40-year high and set to worsen. Today's strike comes after the Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers staged a 3-day walkout last month, the largest in 30 years. Elsewhere, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake has killed at least 3 people in the northern Philippines today. The earthquake also toppled buildings and shook high-rise towers more than 300 kilometers away in the capital, Manila. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the shallow but powerful quake struck the mountainous and lightly populated province of Abra on the main island of Luzon. Shallow earthquakes tend to cause more damage than deeper ones. Police Major Edwin Sergio told newsmen that in Dolores, which felt the full force of the quake, terrified people ran outside their buildings and windows of the local market were shattered. In Japan, officials say a member of a gang of monkeys that has terrorized residents of a Japanese city for weeks has been caught and killed. The monkeys have reportedly injured almost 50 people in Yamaguchi. The male primate was found in the grounds of a high school yesterday evening by specially commissioned hunters. It was tranquilized and later put down when it was identified as one of the animals responsible for the attacks. Authorities have been hunting the monkeys since the attacks began on adults and children about 3 weeks ago. Most injuries have been mild scratches and bites. An official at the local agricultural department told reporters that incidents were still being reported and the search continued for other members of the gang. Now, the space jacket worn by Buzz Aldrin while flying to the moon has sold at a New York auction for $2.8 million. Adorned with a US flag and NASA logo, Aldrin wore the white in-flight jacket while speeding through space in Apollo 11's command module Columbia. It is one of 69 personal belongings that the 92-year-old has decided to put up for sale. The jacket was sold by Sotheby's and becomes the most valuable American space artifact ever sold at auction. The former astronaut traveled to the moon in 1969 and is the only living member of the mission's 3-man crew. And finally, on Worldview, Peggy Mitchell is set to return to EastEnders in a flashback episode looking into her and her family's past. Reports say a younger version of the famous fictional landlady will be played by Jaime Winston. Michelle, the matriarchal leader of the family, was most notably portrayed by the late Dame Barbara Windsor. Dame Barbara joined the soap in 1994, becoming one of its biggest stars, but died in 2020 at 83 after living with Alzheimer's disease for 6 years. Before the actress joined the soap full-time, Peggy Mitchell first appeared as a guest character in 1991, played by Joe Wan. And with that, we wrap up our package for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. I am Xavier Roberts, reaching you from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran, and you have been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.